John Biggers. Biggers was born April 13, 1924, in the shotgun house built by his father in Gastonia, North Carolina. A shotgun house was a popular type of house for poor families in the South. They were called shotgun houses because they were built with one room attached to the back of another in a long row, so that if you shot a shotgun through the front door, it would fly all the way through the house and out the back door. His father, Paul, was a Baptist preacher, farmer, shoemaker, schoolteacher, and principal of a 3-room schoolhouse. His mother, Cora, was a housekeeper for white families. Here he is with all of his older brothers. Biggers attended Hampton Institute, now Hampton University. Biggers planned to become a plumber. His Hampton application included boiler room drawings. But his life took a dramatic change of course when he took an art class with Victor Lowenfeld, a Jewish refugee who in 1939 fled from Nazi persecution in Austria before World War II. Lowenfeld exposed his students to works by African Americans and was concerned with altering his students' perceptions towards their African heritage by introducing them to the religious and social context of African art, of which the Hampton Museum had a significant collection. Here is one of Biggers' early drawings depicting home life. Lowenfeld significantly influenced Biggers' artistic development. Biggers later created works that reflected his perspective of the anguish that people have suffered merely because of their race or religious beliefs. Afterwards, Biggers began to study art at Hampton. Biggers also studied under African-American painter Charles White and sculptor Elizabeth Catlett. There he was introduced to Mexican muralists José Clemente Orozco, David Alfaro Siqueiros, and Diego Rivera, and American regionalists Grant Wood, Reginald Marsh, and Thomas Hart Benton. In 1943 he was drafted into the U.S. Navy, which was at the time segregated. He remained stationed at the Hampton Institute and made models of military equipment for training purposes. In that same year, his talents were recognized when his work was included in the landmark exhibit Young Negro Art at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. When Victor Lowenfeld left Hampton to teach art education at Pennsylvania State University, he persuaded Biggers to follow. In 1946, Biggers enrolled at Pennsylvania State, where he earned a bachelor's and master's degrees in art education in 1948. In that same year, he married Hazel Hales. He earned a doctorate from Pennsylvania State in 1954. He was awarded an honorary Doctor of Letters degree from Hampton University in 1990. In Houston, Texas, Biggers served as the founding chairman of the art department at Houston's Texas State University for Negroes, now Texas Southern University, in 1949. Over the next 34 years, Biggers trained the next generation of African-American artists and teachers that form the vital part of Biggers' legacy. And Mr. Biggers retired from Texas Southern University in 1983. In 1950, Biggers won first prize for his painting The Cradle at the annual exhibition at the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston. Segregationist policies, however, allowed black visitors into the museum only on Thursdays, so he could not attend the show's opening. From 1950 to 1956, Biggers painted 4 murals in African-American communities in Texas, the beginning of his work in murals. He painted many public murals in Houston and elsewhere, including 2 in 1991 for Winston-Salem State University in North Carolina. Most are still in place. John received a mural commissioned by the Young Women's Christian Association, the Blue Triangle branch of Houston, in 1952. The YWCA is a place for African American girls and women to be empowered and to participate within their community. This mural inspired John's doctoral thesis. His mural was titled, The Contribution of Negro Women to American Life and Education. John wanted the mural to represent a familiarity to viewers and their own lives. It honors the sacrifices and endeavors of African American women on behalf of their families and communities, and pertinent human rights for women of all races. The mural was revolutionary and signifies the sociological, historical, and educational influences of heroic women. In Bigger's mural, The History of the International Longshoremen's Local 872, the striking piece depicts the hard physical labor of African American longshoremen on the Houston docks, from the early days when brute strength was a necessity to the beginnings of mechanization, forklifts, for example, and in the late 50s, containerization. A straight shot out of the social realist canon is the way folklorist Pat Jasper describes it. Jasper, director of Folklife and Traditional Arts at the Houston Arts Alliance, says it might be, from my perspective, one of the most important cultural treasures ever seen in the city. Jasper adds, "In terms of telling the story of Houston, I don't know anything comparable." Biggers received a fellowship in 1957 from UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, allowing him to become one of the first African American artists to visit Africa. Under the auspices of UNESCO, he and his wife Hazel traveled to Ghana, Benin, Nigeria, and Togo to experience Western African cultural traditions firsthand. Biggers described his trip to Ghana and Nigeria as a positive shock and as the most significant of my life's experiences. The African design motifs and scenes of life that he witnessed then were important elements of his work. He returned to Africa again in 1969, 1984, and 1987. In a 1975 Houston Oral History Project interview, Biggers spoke of his experiences. "We spent most of our time in the country. People call it bush, that's a name sort of like the hunter. I don't care for that name for the country people because country people have a great traditional culture, and these cultures are all over the country. They are beautiful and they have endured." John Biggers studied African myths and legends and was particularly drawn to the creation stories of matriarchal deistic system, contrasting with the patriarchal images of the European world. As his ideas and images of Africa melded into the memories of the rural southern life, his work became more geometric, stylized, and symbolic. Quilt-like geometric patterning became his unifying element of his work, and color became richer and lighter. However, it is critical to note over the years, Biggers moved from creating works that were overly critical of racial and economic injustice, as in Victim of the City Streets, No. 2, in 1946, to the more allegorical works Birth from the Sea, 1964, and Shotguns, Third Ward, 1987. In 1996, Biggers was invited to create the original design for the Celebration of Life mural in North Minneapolis, a predominantly African American community. The mural was completed by a number of local Minnesota artists, including a few of considerable reputation such as Setu Jones and Takumba Aiken. Unfortunately, due to the creation of a new housing development, the mural was taken down in 2001. In 2016, the Mint Museum in Charlotte, North Carolina, opened a multi-year exhibit, John Biggers, Wheels in Wheels, which includes 12 important paintings, drawings, and prints, as well as rare example of artist's sculpture. Through the use of a rich symbolic language and beautiful craftsmanship, Biggers found connections between personal, familial, and regional histories, traditions, symbols, which he wove together to articulate broader cultural, historical concerns, the exhibit promotion stated. Themes that repeat throughout his career are the importance of women, family, and triumph over adversity, are evident in the works on display. Towards the end of his life, diabetes hindered Biggers' ability to create works of art. He finally lost his battle with the disease and died in Houston on January 25th, 2001.